going on, everybody? Justin here at Trumful Reads, and in this video I have some 5-star book predictions on the topic of medieval history from books that I have in my library. But before we begin, I have some shameless self-promotion here. I just want to let you guys know I've basically reactivated my Etsy shop account where I sell plaques and especially bookmarks made out of primarily cherry and mahogany. If you guys are into that, definitely helps support me and the channel, all that good stuff. Just want to let you know my most recent sort of additions to the shop are bookmarks relating to the Book Junkie Trials readathon. If you guys know what that is, it's a really cool readathon that Rachel Marie has all set up, and I just made a different design for each of the 4 teams as well. I'll put a picture right there. I'll leave a link down below to my Etsy shop. But yeah, I can also do custom stuff and everything if you guys like things like that. But let's just go jump into my 5-star predictions for medieval history. And I got 5 books here, and let's just get started. There's 3 of them are kind of on the same-ish, maybe not the same-ish topic, but in the same-ish era. So I guess we'll just start with those ones. The first one is going to be Summer Blood, England's First Revolution by Dan Jones. He's a fairly prominent, popular historian on medieval history. I think he has a book on the Templars. He's got a book on the Plantagenets, and I think a few others. I believe this is his first work, I believe, and it's on the Peasants' Revolt of 1381, which is actually one of my favorite topics in probably my favorite medieval history kind of topic, definitely at least of English history. And I got 3 other books on the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. As you can see here, bondmen made free, the Great Rising of 1381, and like kind of the primary source material for that event. But it's just something, it's a very, very intriguing just sort of event that sort of happened spur of the moment on the English countryside due to overbearing taxation and kind of the repercussions of the Black Death, and the demand for labor and not getting, the lower classes not getting sort of what they deserve for what they believe, the work that they put in. But anyways, like I said, just a really cool sort of era in history. And I have never really read any of Dan Jones' other works, anything like that. But he is, usually him of his works are always topping kind of the medieval history like bestseller charts. So I'm really hoping this Summer Blood, England's First Revolution, pans out to be a 5-star read on one of my favorite topics. And then Peasants' Revolt was in 1381. Another book on the same sort of era is A Distant Mirror, The Calamitous 14th Century by Barbara Tushman. And she is a very famous historian, probably most famous for her World War I book that I need to read as well, The Guns of August. But this book is all about why the 14th century was literally the biggest disaster pretty much ever. I'm assuming it's covering all kinds of things, including the Black Death, plus all the reoccurring waves of the Black Death after the first outbreak. Probably the Peasants' Revolt is going to be in there. There was also other peasant revolts elsewhere in Europe and about the same time as the 1381 English uprising. For example, there was a German peasants uprising up about the same time as well, and there might be some others that I'm just unfamiliar with. The 100 Years' War was raging throughout much of the 14th century. Obviously, when you have something called the 100 Years' War, which lasted even longer than 100 years, of course, it was kind of more on and off. But if you really think about how, basically a conflict that is so multi-generational, and it just becomes sort of just like a thing, just the status quo of society. It's just a really sort of horrendous kind of aspect of life if you really think about it, especially since for most people during the 14th century are just sort of trying to eke a living out of the soil and the ground and everything. There's just not much leeway for error. So when you basically add all these things, just compounds into this total just disaster that is the 14th century. So I'm definitely looking forward to this book. She's, like I said before, she's definitely highly regarded both as a great writer and as a good historian. So that's why I'm looking forward to A Distant Mirror, and hoping it's a 5-star read as well. And then lastly, for kind of the 14th century-ish era, which is kind of the beginning of the late Middle Ages, we have the English Longbowmen, 1330 to 1515, and this is by Clive Bartlett, and the illustrations are by Gary Embleton. And like I say in all my Osprey Publishing videos, they always have really cool plates that are highly accurate to the time period involved, things like that. So it actually shows, what, these soldiers or people might actually have looked like with their arms and armor. Probably were like lots of manuscript, or I mean, obviously for something like the Middle Ages, there won't be photographs, but we can use photos of the manuscript evidence, things like that as well, which I think is really cool. And obviously this one is all about the English Longbowmen, and I really, I think I will really enjoy this topic because I have a longbow myself. So like if I ever talk about like shooting like a bow and arrow and everything, I'm not talking about these fancy like hunting bows with the cams and everything. I literally have like just like a stick and string, kind of like that guy. So it's kind of just a fun hobby of mine that I don't do nearly enough, just kind of practice archery as I'd like to. But I think because of my just sort of affinity with a longbow, it'd be kind of fun just to read a book on the English longbowman. So that's why I'm hoping for a 5 out of 5 star read for this one. These sometimes, mostly, I would say the majority of the time, they're at least like a 4-star, just really solid attempt. Every now and then there's kind of a dud thrown in there, but I've only I think had 1 or 2 that were just like very subpar, and lots of times they definitely go above and beyond with, like I said, just with the illustrations, and then they have a lot of footnotes and endnotes and sources for further study. So like I said, hoping for 5 out of 5 stars for the English Longbowmen. Alright, another book, kind of on a different trajectory now, is Life in a Medieval Castle by Joseph and Frances Gies. And this is a husband and wife historian team, which I think is really cool. I've also read Life in a Medieval Village and Life in a Medieval City by the same authors. City was a 5 out of 5 star read, and I think Village was either a 4 or 4.5. Not quite as good as City, but still a really good read. And I'm hoping Life in a Medieval Castle is also a 5 out of 5 star read. I think it will lend itself to being more like the City book, because there's definitely like a lot of divisions and separation, and you can kind of break down the different, like, I don't want, not the different parts of a castle, but the different positions within a castle, and kind of studying kind of the siege works, and the actual daily life in the castle is very segmented. If that makes sense, compared to, for example, like a medieval village per se. And I think that's just so like I'm like definitely totally nitpicking right now, basically, but that's kind of partly that was going through my head why I thought this might be a 5 out of 5 star read as compared to like a 4.5 one between like the City and the Village one. But anyways, these are really good social histories. Anyways, if you like any of these topics, whether there's medieval cities, villages, or castles, you should definitely check out these books. They're in a modern reprint edition with like nicer covers than these ones. Basically because George R. R. Martin said, I used these works for research into Game of Thrones and all that, and Song of Ice and Fire and stuff. So because of that, I think they got like a little bit of a popularity boost, and the publisher's like, oh, let's just make a reprint of them, essentially. But like I said, they are really good histories. Nonetheless, I highly encourage you guys to check it out if you want to learn about what life was like for both, like kind of the average person living in whatever sort of place, I guess, these books are covering, and sort of what life was like just for anyone that could possibly be there, and how it was maintained, how it functioned, stuff like that. It's just really interesting. I love social histories. If you guys haven't figured that out yet, but yeah, definitely highly encourage you guys to check these ones out. I'm hoping this one is also a 5 out of 5 star read. And lastly, for one more medieval book, I'm hoping is a 5 star read. It's one of my Folio Society books here. And I'm going with The Vikings by Gwyn Jones. And just look at that slipcase. It's just like super cool. Take it out. And it's got like the nice, oh, what's that called? Red tinting. I don't know if that's the right word. Probably not. But it's got a really cool cover with like the Jormungandr and the guys in sails. Plus the spine, even if the horned helmet's like definitely inaccurate and stuff, it's obviously just kind of for like the styling and everything. But these Photo Society books are just really high quality, really awesome books. They're just fun to read because they're almost like, you know, it's like a deluxe edition. It's just really cool. But anyways, I've been purposely saving this particular book for a while because I think last year I read 4 or 5 books on just the Vikings, a couple general histories, and they were all, you know, they were all okay, like 3.5 or 4 stars, just nothing really standing out as like, you know, a definitive go-to Viking history book. And I'm really hoping this one is it. Gwyn Jones was highly regarded as a Norse language translator for some of like the Icelandic sagas, things like that. And also wrote several history books that were pretty highly regarded, including obviously this one, The Vikings. I think it was originally published in the late 60s, but it went through like a major reprint in the late 80s or early 90s, something like that. So I'm hoping it's just still really good, up-to-date information. And like I said, I've read other reviews where people said it was a really, really good work. And like I said, I'm still just sort of looking for the gold standard. So this is the one I'm hoping is my 5 out of 5 star prediction for a Viking history read. And like I said, it's a Photo Society edition, so that's probably going to give it at least minimum half a star, probably a full star. Just bump, just because it's going to be like so, just like fun to read it, because it's just so good. Like, it's just nice having a Photo Society book. So there you guys have it. Those are my 5, if I can actually put it in the slipcase. Those are my 5 medieval history prediction book. My 5 star. I am totally failing. If you guys don't know, it's like midnight, I think, like right now, but I couldn't sleep, so I was like, I'm just gonna do a video. But anyways, those are my 5 star medieval history book predictions. Tell me what you guys think about any of these books. If you have medieval book recommendations on medieval history, whether that's, you know, the Dark Ages, early, high, late Middle Ages, let me know in the comments down below. I'm always on the lookout for really good history books, especially ancient medieval history. I'd be glad to talk to you guys about those. But like I said, if you've read any of these or know any of the authors, leave some comments down below. I'd be glad to have a discussion about any of that sort of thing. But yeah, just tell me what you guys think. And always remember, even if you're not reading medieval history, but especially if you are reading medieval history, read victoriously.